I know Metroid Dread is far from being a creepypasta, or even really a horror story, but because it does loosely fall into the genre of what I usually talk about, and because Metroid is pretty much the only game series I follow religiously, I'm going to talk about it anyway. Mostly about the story, since that's what I do on this channel, and really only about gameplay elements as far as they affect the tension or horror vibe of the game. I feel like there are much better gameplay experts and other people who can analyze the game from a technical perspective anyway. My overall thoughts on the story are I like it but was disappointed, mainly because things are basically the same at the end of the game story-wise as they are during the start. Samus is still traveling the galaxy with Adam and their slick purple ship. The Metroids and the X-Parasites are all still extinct, just like they both are at the start of the story, and Samus basically has the same abilities she did before arriving on ZDR. I get that Samus becomes a Metroid over the course of Dread, and that the X-Parasites get extra extinct in this game, but Samus is already a Metroid, or at least on course to becoming that at the end of Fusion, and the X-Parasites are pronounced extinct at the end of that arc as well. So Dread basically has to retcon the end of Fusion and say that no, the X weren't really extinct, they were alive this whole time because of the Chozo. Awkward segue into something I liked about the story, the Chozo. I really like that we got to see more full-on cutscenes with living Chozo in-game, in that the real-time universe of Samus's adventure, rather than reading some blurb about the advanced society the Chozo used to be, or Samus recounting some memory of her time in Bird Warrior School or something. I love the scene in the middle of the runtime with Quiet Robe, even if it does majorly interrupt the pacing of the gameplay, and I think his name is stupid. I will say in general, I don't love the name of the Chozo characters mentioned in this game, but I do like the world building we got of the Chozo culture and how there's different tribes with different names and traits and stuff. Honestly, I really liked having Ravenbeak, a Chozo, be the main antagonist of the game, but I didn't love how they just randomly threw in that he's Samus's adopted father at the end of the game. Like, firstly, I don't understand how she doesn't recognize him in the opening cutscene when they have their first little battle and he quickly defeats her. Like, it kind of seems like she knows he's evil right off the bat, but when Adam is telling her later that he has no idea who the mysterious Chozo is who attacked her, it's strange that she doesn't tell him about Ravenbeak because she talks later in the story, like how he's basically her adopted father who raised her. It would have even explained why she just instantly knew to attack him in the first cutscene, but the game plays it off like Samus herself doesn't actually remember that Ravenbeak is her father until the very end when he announces it, and it doesn't make sense to me. Like, did she know the whole time and just never brought it up for some reason? Did he make her forget somehow? Adam mentions at one point that the battle with Ravenbeak gave Samus physical amnesia, but that's never really associated to her mind or her brain or her mental state or her memories in any way. It's just like a physical thing where she lost all her abilities. I'm getting ahead of myself. Probably the most horror-y element of Metroid Dread is the Emmys, because the way they relentlessly chase you and can one-shot you if they catch you. I have mad respect for the way that this mechanic was implemented, and the story explains it in a way that makes sense and feels coherent to the theme and story of the game, so I really like it. To put it briefly, Ravenbeak forced Quiet Robe to reprogram the Emmys to hunt Samus to steal her DNA. It's kind of unclear how he managed to overpower them himself, especially since the Emmys are immune to the Hyper Beam, but the hand waving here doesn't really bother me. There's points in the Emmy zones when you basically have to run out in front of them or otherwise be spotted and chased until you can find a way out of their maze-like zones. The sequences never failed to give me a massive adrenaline rush, and they were always really exciting to me. I feel like the designers implemented the Emmy thing into the game really well without letting the concept stagnate or get too old or samey. I was surprised they never had a moment where the Emmy spills out of its assigned zone and forces you to outrun or outsmart it somehow in the overworld. The way the encounters were originally set up, I was just waiting for a situation like that to come along and subvert the previously established playstyle, but that never happens. I don't think it's a problem as the game already has a lot going on, but I was kind of surprised that at one point they didn't have an Emmy go through its zone door and be like, no, now I'm free and I can do whatever I want. It wouldn't actually say that, but I mean, Adam would probably tell you later on that they evolved past the programming or something that Ravenbeak had done had made them immune to being stuck in one zone or something, I don't know. I liked how the marketing for the game, at least all the previews I saw, made it look like the Emmys were kind of the main thing of the game, like the entire game was going to be about a evading them with some peripheral enemies on the side. And then the actual game totally subverts the expectation of that. I liked that the enemies didn't turn out to be like the central thing that the story revolves around, and I feel like they would have got stale if the game was revolved constantly around avoiding or outrunning them. I have mixed feelings about the X-Parasites returning for this game. On the one hand, they added a lot of tension to the story, and it was cool to see the X-Parasites in modern graphics. I was kind of hoping they would be in the game in some fashion. On the other hand, I didn't love how Dread basically retconned the Fusion story of they're all extinct, just to end with them all being extinct again. It would have been more interesting to have an X escape ZDR or something, and have Adam be like, Samus, the X are out there, and now we must stop them from destroying the universe, or something like that. I don't know, maybe not that exactly, but the game just kind of ends in basically the same state it started in, with Samus and Adam still exploring the universe, maybe on the run from the GF. It's not really made clear if they've forgiven Samus for destroying the BSL. By the way, I should say GF is Galactic Federation. Metroids are still extinct, X-Parasites are still extinct after being brought back into the mix just for this game. Ravenbeak didn't really exist as a threat before this game, and he's no longer a threat after the game because he's dead. All the new Chozo lore that they introduced with this game was great, but it doesn't end up having much of an effect on the series as a whole because all the characters who get introduced in this game are dead by the end of it, so it makes the whole adventure feel really isolated and kind of episodic. That's not really a bad thing by itself, but it makes the whole game feel a lot less important against the backdrop of the rest of the series, where every other game ends with Samus's universe in a different state than in the beginning of the game. Case in point, at the beginning of Metroids are everywhere, Mother Brain is a threat. By the end, Mother Brain is gone and Samus is off to deal with the Metroids on their home planet. At the beginning of Metroid 2, Samus is worried about the threat the Metroids pose to like civilization or the universe or whatever. By the end of Metroid 2, all the Metroids are gone except for one who's nice. Beginning of Super Metroid, there's one Metroid left and a new Mother Brain and a bunch of space pirates on Zebes that are all threatening the universe again. By the end of the game, they're all dead and Samus is having an almost post-mortem depression thing because of the baby Metroid. In Other M, nothing really changes, but nobody likes that game. In Fusion, the Metroids are all dead, but Samus gets infected with an X-Parasite because the Metroids are all dead and loses a part of her humanity and her sense of self. By the end of the game, all the X are extinct, quote-unquote, and Samus is no longer on good terms with the Federation. Also, she's kind of more on good terms with herself and has sort of regained her lost sense of self over the course of Metroid Fusion. My point is, in almost every game in the series before Dread, at least the good ones, something significant happens over the course of the story that completely changes Samus's life and the whole universe of the story Metroid takes place in. In Dread, pretty much everything is the same before and after Samus blows up ZDR. It's just kind of a planet that didn't exist in the universe before this and is gone after this. I feel like this is kind of a lost opportunity, especially considering how much universe building this game does, with stuff like the whole Chozo language Mercury Steam developed, and the Chozo history and race, and also even the Emmy and how they kind of develop the Galactic Federation even more and make them more of like a presence in this game, which I feel like is really an accomplishment because the Galactic Federation themselves aren't actually in the game at all, which I also feel like was a good choice for this story. Also, they play the whole "I'm disappointed in you, my daughter" thing like it's some massive reveal with huge ramifications, but then the story never really cuts back to it or pays it off in any way. It's just kind of left there. I feel like Ravenbeak's big reveal at the end would mean more if he doesn't immediately die in a big battle after the revelation. But because there's no evidence he survived ZDR, it's like, what difference does it make? Samus found her adopted father and now he's dead, the end. Some random thoughts. I thought the boss designs were really good and played into the name of the game really well. I always dreaded the bosses and would have a huge rush while I was fighting them. So well played, Mercury Steam. I really liked the reveal at the end that the Adam you've been talking to the whole game was actually Ravenbeak leading you on. It was kind of just a good aha moment, especially because every once in a while throughout the game in those like cutscenes where you're talking to Adam or he's talking to you, he kind of says things that you wouldn't really expect Adam to say, so that feeling kind of pays off well at the end. I love that random room with the experiment before you have to fight it. It's like a good long chunk of the game before you actually fight the experiment. I love that the game makes you pass through that room like a million times, like long before the fight. I think it it builds this nice tension, like you're wondering the whole time what kind of moves it's gonna have and like when you're gonna have to fight it and what's gonna happen. It kind of reminds me of Fusion, when you can see Nightmare's shadow like buzzing through the ice section the entire time before you actually fight him. I'm not a gamer or like even a good player by any means, but I really loved Samus's moveset and how it feels to zip around ZDR with her. Her movements just feel so crisp and snappy and amazing. And I also like how that kind of plays into the dread of the Emmy, because it's like even though Samus feels so like powerful and like awesome, she's still like completely powerless against the Emmy, so it's like a good juxtaposition that makes them feel a lot scarier. I love Samus's character throughout the game and how nonchalant she is like in the face of the giant behemoth monsters. There's the scene at the end of the Corpus fight where she just casually walks around him with her arm cannon charging up and does like this flip and shoot thing. It's really amazing. I love how she interacts with Adam in the Quiet Robe and how that shows how she's not really like this stone cold emotionless robot with no feelings. Maybe Nintendo will release some overpriced DLC on this game later that'll expand on the story more. In the meantime, I really enjoyed Metroid Dread and what it brought to the series, but I wish the story felt a little more impactful on the rest of like the Metroid universe or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong though. What did you think of Metroid Dread's story? Am I wrong to want more? Is this literally the perfect game? Let me know down below, although please don't tell me that I'm wrong to criticize the game because the gameplay was so good, because I know that and I'm not really disputing it, and this video isn't really about the gameplay, it's about the story anyway. Anyway, I'll see you at Akuns and Decoras next time.